we've got a much longer presentation on our website, so I say enjoy the ride. This is us, multidisciplinary firm, lots of really smart people, work in a lot of areas to make healthy neighborhoods. What do we mean by that? What is a healthy neighborhood? We talk to a lot of folks, we're dealing with cities, municipalities, and foundations. We like to explain the complex systems. I don't think anybody here has trouble understanding how hard it is to build a new neighborhood or work in old ones. So many different forces affecting outcomes. What we talk about in our firm, fundamentally, there's three components of healthy neighborhoods that we care deeply about. They need to be vibrant, lasting, but mostly inclusive. That's the one we really care about, because without inclusivity, it's just not worth our time, it's not worth our effort. So Elizabeth, she's the smart one, I'm the pretty one over there. Talk to her if you want to learn things. We work in all of these buckets. It's because we work in these buckets we have a better, more inclusive approach to these challenges. And we explain to our clients that when we're able to leverage all of these skills, the value proposition and outcome really changes, right? So when we do projects that involve everything, like the France Walk or helping with Main Street redevelopment, it gets really powerful when we can help guide through all of these things. Our proposition is we need to be focusing on reinvesting in walkable areas with existing infrastructure. This is critical for affordability. That's our mantra, which is also Main Street adjacent development. That's where we spend our time making things work. How to describe where to do this? We like to talk to people about your favorite part of town. Think about it. Other than Seabrook as an outlier, because that's new, but when we talk about existing places, we like to point out it's usually built before October 28th, 1929, Black Monday. That's kind of the cutoff point for good urbanism in our minds. Because in 29, there was car light, there was no zoning, and there really was no subsidies. That means you're mobility flexible, use flexible, and cost conscious. So these are the historically incrementally mixed-use places. We totally get Seaside and other these places were done because the zoning sucks so bad, it's hard to do anything good in these places. So we're aware of that. And we always like to point out to cities, if you want your core to thrive, you've got to have enough people living close by to support your businesses. So one of the things we did several years ago, this is Dallas, Georgia, which is about, I think, 5,000 people. And we kind of cribbed some stuff from Bob Gibbs and applied it here. It's a little bit of a hack. But Bob likes to say that a typical commercial service node can cap out about 30,000 square feet of retail. This is a very small downtown that has about that much retail there. And Bob always likes to point out that you need 2,000 households to support those businesses. Our proposition is how would you need to design your place to have enough businesses walkable to support your downtown restaurants and services? It's pretty basic. Simple math, you take the area of a quarter-mile radius, you pull out about 30% for public right-of-way, and then we said, well, let's go to the half-mile radius to catch more land. If you take out public space right-of-ways, you're at about 350 acres, right? In order to have 2,000 households, you need 5.7 households per acre. This is it's math, but it's not that complicated. And we're like, how's Dallas doing? They have 1.5 households per acre around their downtown. You wonder why there's not enough people going downtown to support things. You've got that challenge. The point is, when you put single-family zoning over these surrounding neighborhoods, they're getting what they zone for. They can't legally put the housing there that they need. So our point is we need to fix the zoning and the housing outcomes to make this stuff work in these walkable places. I do a lot of presentations, people are like, what about suburbia? I'm like, I'm not that smart, I can't help you out there. Right? I can help fix us the land by your downtown. So I want to skim through some right-sizing solutions. We talk a lot, Matt Hoffman's talking about how we got to make it simpler to get the stuff done. We need to point out single families, low returns, low brain damage. Large multifamilies, high brain damage, high returns, but you have consultants to help you do it because there's enough budget. All this missing middle stuff is high brain damage and the returns aren't big enough, right? You got to make it easier to do this incremental infill. And so we've been spending a lot of time on that. A lot of our clients are nonprofits, CDCs, municipalities. We're helping them get to better ways to deliver feasibility and attainability, and all our efforts are trying to streamline that. We all know the Sears Roebuck is a great inspiration. You may also know that Sears Roebuck had some great missing middle buildings years ago that you could buy off the shelf as well. We like this one because it's called the Atlanta. That's where we're at. So that's good. So what we did to just copy them is we've got on our website, it's view the PDF for free. You can buy a hard copy for 20 bucks. It's like just some of the housing we're using for our nonprofits, really small, really compact, small scale IRC buildings. But the stuff I think that I want to talk about more is more interesting for here is when you start getting into the plexes, the missing middle stuff, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 plexes, where we've been doing these because we knew our clients as nonprofits can't afford bespoke architecture, right? So we're using some really nicely designed buildings with Elizabeth doing some amazing urban design and master planning to use the buildings we have. So our pricing is way better for nonprofits to get much better outcomes. The other thing we want to show is like, well, how does this work? What kind of sites do you use them? Great buildings, where does this go? So we have a whole other presentation on IRC cottage design. I'm cutting that out. You can find that on our website. I want to skim through the IBC components where you start to put these in an existing context. But the key is we have been yet to successfully be paid to do a single missing middle building on a standard lot. The math doesn't work. It's too small. It's too hard. Where our clients are seeing benefit is when we start taking larger sites. And so we've got dimensions on these sites to make some sense. This was a church property. The other thing that helps is when we're doing the same building a couple times to get replication of design, just to get our costs more in line with the client's need. So this is some bloated, larger missing middle. These were builders. They were really scared about going small. They tell me that I was right after they built it, and they did. So these have been really kind of large 1 and 2 bedroom units. So we don't recommend this as a prototype. They're fine. The builders, they didn't pay us to obviously the term right, but they're passable buildings, decent outdoor spaces. But some of the stuff we're doing in Chattanooga with Lyndhurst Foundation is tighter, smaller, more compact. We always say fourplexes suck. They're really inefficient unless you're doing 4 or 5 of them, right? So this is an example where the same unit building's done multiple times to create some courtyards and some other things like that. We're waiting for better photography. We're hoping the landscape grows in. We're yelling at our clients to put a bigger landscape budget in everything we do. But now we're doing other stuff with them with some of the other buildings I was showing before. This is 32 units on probably 3/4 of an acre, right? And so this has the components: alley access for parking, repeated buildings, good urban design, good streetscape. The other thing I'd like to point out is we can do really good things if we're parking at about 0.6 to 0.7 spaces off-site per unit. And then we're usually trying to pick up the overflow in on-street parking, so context really matters with these projects. Example of how this is coming, this is about to break ground right now. This is another one. Hopefully, Rob and I were talking, might get to see this one maybe 2/3 built in Atlanta next spring if you come. But this is deeply affordable. We're also doing some commercial incubator space as another prototype to continue on with this guy right here. And commercial incubator pretty much means 20 by 20 white box for small business to come in and start from get-go, right? No TI allowances, just ready to go. Good buildings on a more major street, 3-story form, good porches. We like to point out, if they parked it conventionally, they'd lose half the buildings and there'd be no affordability or no density. So this stuff works because of where we're putting it, which is Main Street, downtown adjacent, right? 1 to 2 blocks off, that's the key. And we can use simple boxes on funky sites. This is another way to lay this out. This was a project where they had almost a pro bono architect do a mixed-use building, kind of put dumb mass at the top. It came in out of the gates $500,000 over budget. They needed to be at $6 million, that was $6.5 million. It was as complex as it could. You needed a big commercial contractor. We said, guys, break them in pieces. We already have hard costs on these other 2 buildings from other clients, and let's put a high number on the commercial building. I was like, if you pay us out the wazoo, this is going to cost $5.5 million. This is a nonprofit. And they're like, you mean we could actually take a developer fee for the first time in 30 years? I'm like, yes, you could. So that's how you get hired. There's money, for a pretty nice commercial building. This is Flatiron. This is going to anchor their neighborhood district, and then there's money for really simple fabric buildings, to go in the background there. And the key is these buildings, again, are basically the exact same buildings for the other projects. So we have cost, we have design, speed of permitting, all these things really get accelerated when we take this approach. But again, very simple premise. We need to be investing in walkable areas with existing infrastructure. One of the things I've learned on my own from NTBA is infrastructure is effing expensive. The less you have to put in the ground, the more you put in the building, and or the more affordability you can have for the tenants and residents. That's critical. The other thing that's happened now is we're helping a lot of different cities, particularly in Georgia and Chattanooga. Nobody has zoning that works for any of this stuff. So when we continue to see problems, we get mad and we find solutions. So we were talking to Allie and was like, F it, let's start a new company. And so all these cities need bespoke zoning solutions, but they don't necessarily need to rewrite their own code. And so Allie, Elizabeth, and I have a company called Incodes. It's pretty simple. We're providing tiered zoning solutions for code repair based on scale so that we get better sustainable development patterns, all the stuff I just showed you, lighter, faster, cheaper, but the key is it's incremental. You don't have to hire us to do a full code rewrite. That's a really heavy lift. One of the things we preach is if you want to change zoning, it's educate, pilot, and then work on the policy. So we can help deliver these pilot projects people can touch and feel. It's a lot less scary, just like Matt was saying about pattern zones. If you know what the building choices are going to look like, it's a lot less scary. Same kind of thing with the piloting approach here. And it's simple. Everywhere in Georgia doesn't have attainable housing. they are underutilizing existing infrastructure, and they need a code that pulls together urban design architecture with really importantly development strategies and development math. If you want housing built, it's got a pencil. That's what we're bringing to the table. And it allows it to go and be applied incrementally so you don't have to worry about getting unelected as a politician, right? We work with you and hold your hand through the process. That's it. I will say, again, we've got a way longer version of this on our website. We did a long presentation for Georgia Tech's Economic Incubator Accelerator a couple of weeks ago. So if you want to see more of this, it's on our website. Browse, a lot more IRC stuff. I'm happy to talk more about any of this later. Thanks.
So good morning. My name is Fernando. I won't pronounce my last name in order not to intimidate you. But for those of you that don't know me, I've been here at NTBA a long time, and I will disappoint several of you because I will not be speaking about vinyl siding today. Instead, I've been asked to organize this panel on housing, transportation, the new metric of affordability. Now, traditionally, we think of affordability with a focus on housing costs. However, in recent times, it's become evident that transportation costs play an equally significant role in the housing affordability equation. So today we've assembled a panel of distinguished experts on the topic to delve into the complex interplay between housing and transportation. And they're going to offer their insights into how to make our communities not only more affordable, but better connected. Some of the aspects in our discussion, and one that I have particularly interest in, is how density can make public transportation feasible. And density is, of course, a controversial subject with the community. So how do you approach the community to have a constructive dialogue about density and transportation? Perhaps advertising and marketing can help, not only to disseminate the changes that are needed in the community, but also to disseminate them in a way that makes them appealing, even attractive, or at least not so intimidating. We're also going to talk a little bit about how density, affordability, plays into social equity. We're not going to limit this to the traditional two-pronged racial and economic aspects, but also what about the youth? What about the old folks? And increasingly, all of us in between. I hope that what we get out of this panel today will be, if not a pathway, at least a roadmap to how we can approach affordability and inclusivity in our cities. So with that, I'm going to turn over the presentation to the first speaker, architect Ali Thurman Quinlan, who will be addressing density and transportation. Each of the speakers will introduce themselves to avoid the tedious reading of their bios. So, Ali, you're up.
I am an architect and a landscape architect, licensed in both, the only one in the state of Arkansas as far as I know. I'm also a small developer, so I've done infill development here in Bateville, just a few blocks down the hill here. Bought a property in 2016 and been slowly redeveloping it since. I have a general contracting company that does historic preservation, mostly of really large historic homes here primarily in Fayetteville. And then I do master planning, architecture, sales and marketing, interior design, landscape architecture for infill housing at a variety of scales. A lot of the projects that you've seen locally, we somehow weasel our way into. So worked on the Ramble as the local landscape architect, doing all that streetscape work for the city. I'm the town architect for Markham Hills, so I was the person standing up getting yelled at all those planning commission meetings from the state of Markham Hill crew. I was joking with Baron Lubeck here that we have two speeds really in our office, which is either the charm offensive, which tends to be pretty successful, and when that doesn't work, we usually go to the die mad about it approach. Which is, the reality is most of the people that are protesting most of our work are, a generation up from me, and so we tend to, I think that actually is advice that Matt Petty gave me at some point. At some point, if you're patient enough policy-wise, that the people who hate this will at some point stop complaining. So we just have to outlast them. That's the important thing. So one of the things that we work on here locally, and I'm also on the board of the National Incremental Development Alliance with Matt Petty, and we have lots of faculty members here, so we've got a good turnout from that. One of the things we talk a lot about in our work, and a lot of the unit types that we develop are very small, and so a lot of that has to do with demographics. And one of the things that the set of slides that is our most standard was talking about household sizes. And so about a third of households in the United States are one person living alone, which in the 1920s was like an unthinkable, right at the end of good urbanism even was an unthinkable housing type because we couldn't afford to do it. And so people live alone because they want to, and now they can afford to. And so about a third of our housing units in the United States have one person living alone in them. About another third have two people living together. That's generally a romantic couple. Sometimes it's a single parent, single child, sometimes it's roommates, but it's almost all the two-person households are couples who have not yet, will not, or are already done having kids. And so that means a strong 60% of the country is sleeping in one bed at night unless someone is snoring. And 11% of our housing stock is 1 and 2 bedroom units. And so as we think about why housing is expensive, zoning is the number one reason we all know that housing is expensive, right? Zoning was designed to make housing expensive. Larger homes on larger lots are more resources, cost more money. The second component of that, though, is that our housing stock tends to be really large because we have this expectation that houses need to have families, that we need to have yards, right? That we need all this extra space. And so the predominant new construction type that is built is 3 to 4 bedrooms. Most of our housing stock is 3 to 4 bedrooms, and most of those bedrooms are sitting empty or with guest room furniture in them most of the time. And so as we start to look at housing affordability, the two things that we really have to think through are those demographics. How do we really build housing for those 1 and 2 person homes that often are not people who want to be living in a 1-bedroom apartment, right? We have our kind of our multi-family solution to providing 1-bedroom units, which is often really mismatched to 1 and 2 person households tend to be wealthier, they tend to be older, and they tend to be more female. Most of the people who are in really oversized housing are women above 60 who are still in a house that they raised kids in, that due to divorce or death, they are now the only resident of. We don't have a really good path for them to stay in their neighborhood, to stay in a home ownership situation, to really make good use of equity and financing, but be in a home that is appropriately sized for them. And so as we think through this kind of wealthier, older, single and double person household, there is this really great place for houses that are smaller, that are better designed, that are better located in terms of walkability to amenities, to jobs, right? We can't necessarily subsidize our way out of housing unaffordability if we're in a system that's designed to be unaffordable. And in the same way, we can't bus people out of bad layouts for cities, right? We can't use transit to design around the fact that our houses are not located next to things that we want to go to. Most of our trips in the United States are under 6 miles. Right? Almost all of our car trips are relatively short. And we've made that car requirement really out of this zoning and planning approach that requires us to not live within a walkable or bikeable distance to the amenities we primarily want. And so as we figure out kind of zoning and as we figure out mixed use, really addressing and focusing on that super underserved household size and arrangement is a real key to solving this problem. And I think one of the things that these numbers can also feel like they don't apply to you, but they are really consistent across the United States. I know where's Jeff? We have somebody from Utah here, which is our outlier in the country. It is the largest household size in the country as a state, right? And so instead of being 71%, which is what Fayetteville is in terms of 1 and 2 person households combined, it's 64%. 64% of households are really small. So we have to think about too, there are a lot of the cities that you all are working in where these numbers are more like 80% of households are 1 and 2 people. And so as we figure out that for sale often, right, it's often a for sale product that's really appealing because it's somebody who can afford to purchase a home, who wants to be able to have a subsidized 30-year secondary market mortgage. They want to have something that's low maintenance. They want to have some place to work from home. They often want access to a guest bedroom. We've been able to solve too, if you're doing clustered neighborhoods, if you have an intentional Airbnb that's going to be in the neighborhood that you're marketing and selling as the guest room of the neighborhood, you can cut out a bedroom from every single unit. And so as we start to think about addressing problems for people within the actual resources that they need and the price points that they need, we can start to solve those problems really kind of elegantly. One of the other things that you have to mentally shift as you start to build houses for often higher income 1 and 2 person households is that the price per square foot of these houses is going to make no sense whatsoever relative to the product that you're used to building. You really have to have a sales team that is ready to market and sell the total price to own the house, not the price per square foot to buy the house, right? Houses are not necessarily commodities. Getting a discount on more square footage isn't helpful to you if the overall cost to own that house from a maintenance, from an upkeep, from a cleaning, from a mortgage standpoint is not affordable. And so one of our most successful product types was relatively experimental. It's here a couple blocks south. We built 4 500 square foot, 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, single family homes on a 50 by 150 infill lot. So the overall density of the project is 24 units per acre. It's a corner lot, which is why the parking works. They surface park next to the houses in the fire setbacks. And they were, at the time, price per square foot for houses are in that, kind of neighborhood, were around 165 a square foot. For sale product that was relatively new and nice. These hit the market at 287 a square foot, which there was like a state article about how crazy this was. The total price to purchase this house, though, was $150,000. And it's the cheapest house that has sold, downtown Fayetteville in like a 10-year period, I think, that's new construction. And so as we start to think about what we measure and how we think about it, those houses they've now tripled in cost probably. There's one on the market right now for I think $350, which is entertaining 5 years after they're built. But in terms of demand, they all sold right away because the cost to own them, that mortgage payment, was half as expensive as renting an apartment in the neighborhood at the time. And so being able to hit density, right, is our other kind of key to that demographics. We have to be able to provide significantly more small units to fit a lot more households that are much smaller into a smaller area and to make those land costs work. And so as we start to look at zoning reforms and really looking at your projects, that density unit per acre is really hard to stick to as we continue to have that mean less and less people. Can't wait to hear all about how else people are solving these challenges. But in general, our takeaways here are smaller households mean smaller units. Smaller units are more affordable, but your price per square foot metric is going to be nuts. But you have to get used to some different math. Thank you.
We're running a full communications campaign. We're in the middle of this campaign right now. This is at the core, I think, of the void that groundwork is filling in Northwest Arkansas. Before groundwork, there was not a consistent and reliable and trusted voice for housing in general in this region. And it's an area that we've stepped into. We need to bring best practices and new ideas to the region. And the goal really is, with the communications work, is when a zoning change, when a comprehensive plan, when a specific project hits planning commission or hits city council, we've already educated our residents sufficiently and to the point that they don't turn into nits. We cannot do all of this policy work and create a fund and identify ways for us to invest only for it to get shot down at council. It's going to be a very long, it's an intensive process. One of the strategies that's not highlighted here is we're running a grassroots campaign. We're at our local farmers markets. We've hired some interns from the university that are helping us with this, and they wear shirts that just say, "Want to talk housing." Through this direct engagement, we're impacting our region, we're educating our region with the hope that maybe they're not necessarily going to show up at council and support these ideas, but they're not going to show up and oppose them either. With that, I look forward to the discussion and appreciate you having me today. Thank you.